It's open, and we're on.
There are 2 participants in this conference. Please announce yourself.
This is the 523 Happy Hour with your host, Kelly Lincoln. Ooh, that's here on netrootsradio.com.
Oh.
Let me just turn down my headphones so I can hear myself like I really want to. Yeah, baby. Good evening, afternoon, and welcome to the Eris and ADHD approved 523 Happy Hour, where we meander through the days, the weeks, events, and the events that happened only in my head. So this is what's... Hey, how y'all doing this week? It's been, short? It's been another what the... Flavian? The flit? What the flit? What the fork? Frack? Whatever. Yes, I am your meandering host, Kelly Lincoln. And on today's show, we're going to once again go through my week in review, talking about things that may or may not have actually happened. Who knows? That is up to you to decide. Once more, while I don't have a net kook for this week, I do have a hero of the Republic. And so far, he is holding the record for consecutive hero. And he's actually getting, he will actually have the glorious Order of the Cracked Chamber Pot bestowed upon him because I managed to find the cracked chamber pot, and I'm currently working on personalizing it for this individual. And, what do we have here? My quest for 29 continues. I am down to 160. Yay, go me! Saw my nutritionist the other day, and we got on the scales, and yes. Yeah, she's happy with the adjustments that I've made to my diet. I'm happy with the adjustments I've made to my diet, even though I'm actually eating far less but moving more. Let's get, Chrissy Teigen schlonged Trump this week with her comeback because he went after her husband, John Legend, for not mentioning him on the TVs for all he's done for criminal justice reform. And She posted a really adorable picture addressed to their daughter Luna, saying, this is your first day of school, and she made a dig at thWimp, and he lashed out, calling her a filthy-mouthed woman, filthy-mouthed wife, basically suggesting that Legend needs to smack her around a bit to get her under control, because we all know what a loving, peaceful man he is. thWimp is. So, filthy-mouthed, and she called him a pussy-ass bitch, which apparently you can use those 3 words, but not in the same phrase. So, Twitter wouldn't let it trend. So people worked around it. So you had Pabotis, which I really like. The Pabotis is the Padotis. So he got, and Noah schlonged him by saying, you really should... We're supposed to be a trusted source, but then again, the whole concept of what he's doing in his week-long tirade, temper tantrum, is that he would much rather privatize it to AccuWeather. So our weather, our life and death weather reports can be privatized and monetized. So by sowing the seeds of doubt about the National Weather Service and the National Oceanic and Aeronautics Agency, it's much easier to privatize it. Because everything's regarding around private enterprise, and governments don't do jack shit except take our money and spend it however they please, and stuff that we don't need roads or say bridges that have been retrofitted or rebuilt or even brand torn down and rebuilt. Oh no, we don't need that at all. We don't need to go from point A to point B and sit on, roads without potholes, without bottoming out our cars. Oh no, we don't need that. It's all about sticking the money, How much money does one individual really need? Oh, speaking of money and how much they need, it is apparently the Sackler family, the people that own Purdue Pharmaceutical and are responsible for the most for the opioid epidemic, have been sort of bleeding money, allegedly have been bleeding money out of Purdue Pharma to the tune of $1 billion. So when the settlement shows up, there won't be quite enough money for them to actually settle, pay out. I mean, how much do it, So let's see what else is going on here. Oh, yes. Felicity Huffman got sentenced to 14 days for her part in the cash for class scandal. So what's going to happen to Lori Loughlin? That's another thing we need to wonder about. She's fighting this, which means that unless she plea deals, she might end up being the one that actually goes away. Now, my feeling is this: is that, I think the sentence is a little on the light side, but you also have to look at the fact that she managed to maybe hubby managed to totally ruin any opportunity their kids have for higher education, because even if they were to withdraw and then apply to another school and get admitted, there would still be the taint of, oh, how much did your mommy pay to get you in? It's kind of like when I was attending the National Shakespeare Conservatory, there was a student there that, in my opinion, should not have been there, should never have been accepted in. When I hear the phrase or read the phrase professional training, I expect to be with professionals and not with, for the most part, there were a shit ton of professionals there, and except for a couple of people, one of whom disrobed every chance she got, which reminded me of somebody I did improv with who disrobed every chance he got. No, it was an acting class. I was in San Francisco. He took off his clothes every chance he got, which was okay because he looked good without his clothes on. However, this person went to the point that the school's conservatory's director's kids were going, she's always taking her clothes off. And in our summer session, I had enough of this individual. I was also working with a torn ACL ligament, and I was being physically assaulted by her and her friend. And finally, I turned around. I love it when people do this. Finally, turned around and asked her who she went down on to get accepted. Well, she ended up going to the director and very loudly proclaiming my comment about it. And instead of getting mad at me, he lit off on her for saying that with the kids, his kids, within earshot of it. But it's true. As far as I was concerned, she swallowed to get into the school. She never should have been there. And the last I heard, which was several decades ago, and so I don't know if she is still stripping down in Florida, but more power to her. She's got a job. Who knows? So, Lori Loughlin, you've been warned. You've wrecked your kids' lives. For what? Got them into USC. Big fucking deal. They can't go anywhere now. They cannot apply to any college or university without your stink being attached to them with being accepted, if they ever get accepted again. But then again, from what I understand, your kids don't want to be well, at least one of your kids doesn't want to be in college. She'd rather be off partying. And so there's that. Oh, whoops, meant to do that. I've also decided to start something new, small segment, predicated on, that was me moving my table around. I don't know if you heard that or not, but on, Volley's word of the day, which is really kind of a fun Alexa skill, which if you don't have Alexa... Alexa, no, I don't. Alexa, no.
Okay, next is 20 questions. 20 questions will guess with your kitten. Would you like to give it a try?
No.
Next is curiosity. Join millions of people.
Alexa, stop. Yes, that was me having fun with well, you know who. Can't say her name. She who shall not, the artificial intelligence that shall not be named. So here I am. I am actually looking for the my slang dictionaries, because I love obsolete slangs. Oh yes, slang of the day. There is this skill that does a word of the day, and it's from Volley FM. And if you have Alexa, I recommend it because it's really kind of cool. So I'm taking a page from them, and I am doing a slang word of the day. Because why the heck not? Here we are. Today's slang, let me put my glasses on. Today's period slang is absquatulate. To take leave or to disappear. Absquatulate is spelled ABSQUATULATE. And this is from 1843, and its usage is, a can of oysters was discovered in our office by a friend, and he absquatulated with it and left us with our mouths watering. The Missouri Reporter, February 2nd. This was actual usage. So the word again is absquatulate, to take leave, to disappear.
It's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
And now, do-do-do-do-do-do. And now. It's Heroes of the Republic. Today's glorious order of the cracked chamber pot once again is bestowed upon the one and the only Donald J. thWimp. And why, you may ask? For a few reasons. Primarily the one that he apparently disowned his youngest progeny, Baron, by simply referring to him as Melania's child. Yes. Apparently, his kids are all grown up. He doesn't have any small children. He doesn't have any blonde daughters from his second marriage. He's just a man with 3 grown kids. So we have that. So that's why he's our... Also, another reason is that apparently Trump insider, a man by the name of John Sweeney, who is a Trump insider and former Republican House member, in August signed a contract to lobby on behalf of a Russian bank connected to Vladimir Putin's government. It was there to stave off sanctions from U.S. government. Sweeney, who formerly represented a district near Albany, filed paperwork late last month with the Justice Department's Foreign Agents Registration Act to represent Vinishkombank, known as VEB.RF, a Kremlin-controlled investment bank. And by Kremlin-controlled, we know that means Vlad, the other Vlad, has control of bank. It's all his. All money is his. The bank's chair, Yegor Shuvalov, was appointed last year by Russian President Vladimir Putin, who gave him orders to increase funding of national development projects. Filing says that Sweeney will, quote, engage in meetings and other communications with U.S. government officials regarding potential new sanctions legislation, ... that could affect the bank. Shuvalov, along with all members of the bank's supervisory board, was included on a January 2018 Treasury Department report listing officials closely affiliated to the Russian government. Now, this report, which Congress required Treasury to issue, did not lead to sanctions against those individuals and bank, and its officers don't currently face any, but the bank could be hurt by sanctions legislation proposed by Senators Lindsey Graham. Oh, no, and Lindsey? Really? And Robert Menendez of New Jersey, which would bar U.S. firms and citizens from investing in Russian energy projects or participating in ventures that involve Russian government debt. Now, how's Moscow Mitch going to take that? Because we all know that the aluminum plant in Kentucky is all about making sure that there's at least one state that's controlled by Russia. Yes, Moscow Mitch. Leningrad Lindsay is like coming after your oligarchs. Sweeney was hired to work for Vinishkom. I'm going to try that again. For Vinishk Ekonomkom Bank by the International Center for Legal Protection, a Moscow entity formed to help Russia and Russian entities enmeshed in complex international legal disputes. The one-time House member will receive $62,500 per month. God, I'd like to have that for a year. Wow. I'd like to have that salary, $62,500. Wow, I'd love that. Reached by phone, and that was according to a contract that he filed. And Sweeney said he would call back, but he hasn't responded. He hasn't done so yet. He has not responded to voicemail or a question sent by text message. Now, Sweeney represented upstate New York district from 1999 through 2006 when he was defeated by Kristen Gillibrand. So, of course, this is revenge. How dare you, woman? We'll put that down. In the final weeks of the 2006 race, Sweeney faced domestic abuse allegations, which she's denied. In the years that followed, Sweeney twice pled guilty to drunk driving charges. Sweeney stopped drinking and recently announced 10 years of sobriety, which I congratulate him for. The fact that he's now sober is to be applauded. He also weathered a federal grand jury investigation into whether he took official acts while in office to help 3 clients of an Albany lobbying firm in exchange for, quote, a stream of financial benefits, unquote. According to FBI records cited by the Albany Times, he was never charged in that case, which lasted from 2006 to at least 2008. And he was an early Trump backer, successful primary campaign. Sweeney led Trump's successful primary campaign in New York. He served on the here's his resume. He was hired because he's got Trump's ear. See, he was on the transition team. He helped vet potential senior national security and intelligence officials. Oh, dear God. Ambassadors and political appointees for multiple agencies. And he's been working for Putin since 2017, when he began lobbying for the White House soon after Trump took office. He worked on behalf of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, a project partly owned by Russia's state-run gas Gazprom. The pipeline, scheduled to be completed by next year, would transport natural gas directly from Russia to Germany, bypassing Ukraine, which could damage that country's gas industry. But of course, let's see, his work for which he reportedly received $470,000 in fees, included opposing, quote, potential financial sanctions affecting the project. Lobbying disclosure forms he filed with Congress say he focused on influencing the executive office of the president. So how much money were you offered, Mr. President? He's also represented Ihor Kolomoisky, a Ukrainian tycoon who controlled Ukrainian banks seized by the country's government in 2006. Due to purported lack of capital and financial improprieties, the bank sued Kolomoisky. Well, he's like, he's working for the corrupt. He's the front man for the corruption. Gotta give it to him. So now Sweeney is among a small group of Trump insiders who have become lobbyists for Russian firms and related interests. Brian Lanza, former Trump campaign and transition aide, is now a lobbyist at Mercury Public Affairs, where he represented the EN Plus Group, an aluminum company founded by Oleg Deripaska. Yeah, that's the company that bought Kentucky from Mitch McConnell. An oligarch, Lance and Mercury helped the company win relief from U.S. sanctions, along with Moscow. Mitch helped too. Brian Ballard, who formerly lobbied for Trump in Florida, has since built a thriving Washington practice. He has represented David Yakubashvili, a Russian oligarch with interest in gas and the food industry. Yakubashvili identifies himself as president of Russian-American Council for Business Cooperation, a group that says it was created at Putin's behest to boost trade between the countries. Now, we know that so we know where that's coming from. And then at this bizarre rally that Trump was at while the Democratic debate was going on the other day, he stood up there and he ranted and railed for, for 68 minutes. And said, quote, "You have to elect me. You have no other choice." Oh, and he prefaced that with, "Whether you like me or not, it doesn't matter. You have to elect me. You have no choice." That's because the GOP has decided, the Republican Party has decided that no one's going to challenge him because we all know what a fucking loser he is. And then he went on to criticize the lighting that was used, claiming that the light is the worst. A comment he made, New York Times reported, during an extended aside about his dislike for energy-efficient light bulbs. He complained that the light made him look orange, and so do you. Well, actually, there's a good probability he's got jaundice and whatever, and he's using spray tan to cover that up, but the way it's mixing on his skin is just making him orange. He needs to take a look at that base makeup he's looking at, and maybe not go for such an orangey, go for maybe a more primary, jaundice. It's yellow, so let's see, red would be, I could always do a color wheel sort of thing about the colors, but I'm not going to do that. Tweet. So that's what's going on. That's part one of this whole thing. And then, okay, so we got and I came across something else, and I found this Vice, I guess, from CNN. And this is actually really very disturbing. Since we've had an uptick in acts of Jew hate, be it Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn being physically assaulted with bricks, sucker punched, beaten, synagogues being burnt or shot up and Jews murdered, being called disloyal because we don't support the corrupt Prime Minister of Israel, or even supporting the corrupt occupant of the People's House. The fact that Homeland Security is now investigating who drew a swastika inside one of the buildings. Inside, that means it was an employee who drew a swastika on the, And this is from CNN. A hand-drawn swastika was found on the third floor of a Department of Homeland Security building on Friday in Washington, a government official told CNN. Some staffers in the building on the St. Elizabeth campus in Washington were notified about the Nazi symbol in an email from Principal Deputy Undersecretary for the Office of Intelligence and Analysis Brian Murphy, which was obtained by CNN. Quote, "Unfortunately today, a hand-drawn swastika was located on the third floor," Murphy wrote in the email sent out shortly after 5 p.m. Friday. "First, I want to repeat what Undersecretary for Intelligence and Analysis David Glaway, the Secretary, and many others in the department have said in the past. There is no room in the workplace for such symbols of hate. But you can hate. And there's no room in the workplace for those who ascribe to such a thing. Then I guess he needs to get rid of everybody in Homeland Security that supports the separation of families, the abuse of children in concentration camps, forcing children to drink out of filthy toilets. He's got to get rid of all those that tolerate hate. I have communicated with the USIA Glawe, who is currently in Israel, and he is disgusted by what has happened. Yeah, only because it's probably poorly drawn. Oh, how nice of them. Murphy then details a number of steps he said the department is taking, including the removal of the swastika. Wow. One of the steps they're doing is removing the swastika. Asking staffers and cleaning personnel if they saw anything, quote-unquote, suspicious. Notifying the Department of Homeland Security's offices of the Inspector General and Security, asking the DHS Insider Threat Program to, quote, take steps as appropriate, and hearing suggestions on the steps we may want to take from the DHS Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. Wow, they actually have an Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties for the folks that work at the DHS, and wow, and they can just blithely go around for civil liberties and civil rights on the American people. Murphy closed the email by reiterating hypocritically that has, quote, no tolerance in our workplace for such acts of hate. And but they do tolerate it elsewhere. And this email is just the next step in our communication and action plans. As happens in office, an employee commented on the email but accidentally replied to all. Check out the latest INA intelligence and analysis. Insanity. As if leadership really cares, the employee wrote. I guess I should not be surprised. Murphy responded to that individual, also replying all. I do care, Murphy wrote. Neither Murphy nor the employee responded to emails requesting a comment, but in a statement to CNN, Andrew Meehan, the acting assistant secretary for public affairs from DHS, said the act of drawing a swastika has, quote, no place, unquote, in the department. That's because it has everything to do with being outside of the department. You don't draw your swastikas on the walls inside the DHS or outside the DHS. You draw your swastikas by placing children in concentration camps, forcing them to sleep on the floor in crowded, unhealthy conditions so they get ill and die from their illnesses so you don't have to feed them anymore. Because you've got to make room for the new kids, because you can't stack them like cordwood while they're still living. Quote, this display of hate and cowardice does not represent the dedicated, hardworking men and women of the Department of Homeland Security, Meehan said. It has no place in an organization that works tirelessly to protect the American people and combat hate in all its forms, unless it's being driven by the commander in tweet. The situation was immediately referred to the Office of Inspector General and is currently being investigated to ensure that swift and corrective action is taken. Oh, God love the mini-true. All hail the mini-true. Nothing's going to happen because we're never going to know what happened. Because we are only prole feed. We're only the proles. We don't need to know what's going on.
Do you worry about Donald White House?
And I'm in the White House and I was lonely.
I know I do. Hi, I'm Martha Stewart, and there's a free service that you need to know about. It's called A Place for Don.
If you have a windmill anywhere near your house, they say the noise causes cancer.
They're the nation's largest bat-crazy criminal chief executive referral service, and they can help you find the right federal facility fast.
I'm not sure that I've ever even heard of a Category 5.
A Place for Don offers free one-on-one advice for congresspeople who haven't quite made up their minds about a referral.
I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges.
And a personalized list of maximum security homes, one of which will be perfect for an ex-chief executive. Believe me, I know. I've been there.
We told Don, we found this place. It's affordable, it's great. You're gonna love it. Let's go look at it.
Caring for a delusional president with a limited grip on reality can be difficult.
God bless the United States.
But now there's a place for answers. A place for Don.
If you are struggling to get information about where to put your president during this difficult time, then call to get the free help you need. Call now. 1-800-FED-LOCK. That's 1-800-FED-LOCK.
You know I'm totally off script right now.
This is your shiny gold shovel. 2 coats, guaranteed. Shovel your way out of the shit and into the truth. Dig yourself out of the shit. $29.99. That's right. Only $29.99 plus shipping. Except no substitute. Get yours now.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your way out. Welcome back. Oh. What is there to say? Before I get into the last part, I want to read a Philip K. Dick short story because I love Philip K. Dick, and I'm also recording this as a piece for my demo reel. Ow! Removing a staple, and I am gouging myself. This is a really great short story. If you love dystopian fiction, you must read Philip K. Dick. He's but if you saw I can't remember the title of the Schwarzenegger movie now. It was on the other day, but it's the title of the story is I can remember it for you wholesale. But this is a short story by Philip K. Dick titled "The Eyes Have It." It was written in 1953, and it's featured in and it was It was quite by accident I discovered this incredible invasion of Earth by life forms from another planet. As yet, I haven't done anything about it. I can't think of anything to do. I wrote to the government, and they sent back a pamphlet on the repair and maintenance of frame houses. Anyhow, the whole thing is known. I'm not the first to discover it. Maybe it's even under control. I was sitting in my easy chair, idly turning the pages of a paperbacked book someone had left on the bus when I came across the reference that first put me on the trail. For a moment, I didn't respond. It took some time for the full import to sink in. After I comprehended, it seemed odd I hadn't noticed it right away. The reference was clearly to a non-human species of incredible properties, not indigenous to Earth. A species, I hasten to point out, customarily masquerading as ordinary human beings. Their disguise, however, became transparent in the face of the following observations by the author. It was at once obvious the author knew everything. Knew everything, and was taking it in his stride. The line, and I tremble, remembering it even now, read, his eyes slowly roved about the room. Vague chills assailed me. I tried to picture the eyes. Did they roll like dimes? The passage indicated not. They seemed to move through the air, not over the surface. Rather rapidly, apparently. No one in the story was surprised. That's what tipped me off. No sign of amazement at such outrageous things. Later, the matter was amplified. His eyes moved from person to person. There it was in a nutshell. The eyes had clearly come apart from the rest of him and were on their own. My heart pounded and my breath choked in my windpipe. I had stumbled on an accidental mention of a totally unfamiliar race, obviously non-terrestrial. Yet to the characters in the book it was perfectly natural, which suggested they belonged to the same species. And the author? A slow suspicion burned in my mind. The author was taking it rather too easily in his stride. Evidently, he felt this was quite an unusual thing. He made absolutely no attempt to conceal this knowledge. The story continued. Presently, his eyes fastened on Julia. Julia, being a lady, had at least the breeding to feel indignant. She is described as blushing and knitting her brows angrily. At this, I sighed with relief. They weren't all non-terrestrials. The narrative continues. Slowly, calmly, his eyes examined every inch of her. Great Scott! But the girl turned and stomped off, and the matter ended. I lay back in my chair, gasping with horror. My wife and family regarded me in wonder. "What's wrong, dear?" my wife asked. I couldn't tell her. Knowledge like this was too much for the ordinary run-of-the-mill person. I had to keep it to myself. "Nothing," I gasped. I leaped up, snatched the book, and hurried out of the room. In the garage, I continued reading, and there was more. Trembling, I read the next revealing passage. He put his arm around Julia. Presently, she asked him if he would remove his arm. He immediately did so with a smile. It's not said what was done with the arm after the fellow had removed it. Maybe it was left standing upright in the corner. Maybe it was thrown away. I don't care. In any case, the full meaning was there, staring me right in the face. Here was a race of creatures capable of removing portions of their anatomy at will, eyes, arms, and maybe more, without batting an eyelash. My knowledge of biology came in handy at this point. Obviously, they were simple beings, unicellular, some sort of primitive single-celled things, being no more developed than a starfish. Starfish can do the same thing, you know. I read on, and came to this incredible revelation tossed off coolly by the author without the faintest tremor. Outside the movie theater, we split up. Part of us went inside, part over to the cafe for dinner. Binary fission, obviously. Splitting in half and forming two entities? Probably each lower half went to the cafe, it being further, and the upper halves to the movies. I read on, hands shaking. I had really stumbled onto something here. My mind reeled as I made out this passage. I'm afraid there's no doubt about it. Poor Bibney has lost his head again, which was followed by, and Bob says he has utterly no guts. Yet Bibney got around as well as the next person. The next person, however, was just as strange. He was soon described as totally lacking in brains. There was no doubt of the thing in the next passage. Julia, whom I had thought to be the one normal person, reveals herself as also being an alien life form similar to the rest. Quite deliberately, Julia had given her heart to the young man. It didn't relate what the final disposition of the organ was, but I didn't really care. It was evident Julia had gone right on living in her usual manner like all the others in the book, without heart, arms, eyes, brains, viscera dividing up in two when the occasion demanded without a qualm. And thereupon she gave him her hand. I sickened. The rascal now had her hand as well as her heart. I shudder to think what he's done with them by this time. He took her arm. Not content to wait, he had to start dismantling her on his own. Flushing crimson, I slammed the book shut and leaped to my feet, but not in time to escape one last reference to those carefree bits of anatomy whose travels had originally thrown me on the track. Her eyes followed him all the way down the road and across the meadow. I rushed the garage and back inside the warm house as if the accursed things were following me. My wife and children were playing Monopoly in the kitchen. I joined them and played with frantic fervor, brow feverish, teeth chattering. I had had enough of the thing. I want to hear no more about it. Let them come on. Let them invade Earth. I don't want to get mixed up in it. I have absolutely no stomach for it. The end. I love a good short story. Now I'm going to have to re-record that because there were there's a couple of errors that I made in the reading, which, if you read the whole thing, you could probably guess on your own. So that was my little diversion of the evening. And now on to our final portion, where ICE, thinking that they could outsmart the Never Again Action, which is a Jewish group protesting ICE and U.S. immigration policy. They had planned to protest a public board meeting of the Central Falls Detention Facility Corp., which manages the Wyatt facility, on the evening of September 9th. So what this group, what they did was, what the corporation did, decided to hold it on the Sabbath, thinking, Jews won't show up. But there is this concept in Judaism called pikuach nefesh, which means to save a life. And under pikuach nefesh, saving a life outranks observance of the Sabbath and the high holy days, because saving a life is the most important thing. See, so what they said is, on Wednesday the corporation, it was from the night, so it's held Friday the 13th. On Wednesday, the corporation announced that the meeting had been moved to the Friday time. The meeting will include an opportunity for public comment. We wanted to have the meeting as fast as possible, the corporation spokesman Christopher Hunter told the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. He said we'd reschedule the meeting shortly, and we did as fast as we could. Hunter bristled when asked if the board considered that Friday night was near the beginning of Shabbat. I am not going to dignify that with an answer, he said, which was his answer. Never Again Action still planned to protest on Friday, meeting the pikuach nefesh takes precedence. Saving lives takes precedence. I can't speak for the intentions of members of the Wyatt Detention Facility Board, but it does seem to be pretty deserving of attention that after a Jewish group planned to protest for their meeting, they decided to hold it at sundown on Friday, Tal Frieden, protest organizer. But thankfully, leaders in our tradition have taught us that we pray with our feet so we won't be deterred. Yes, pikuach nefesh, to saving a life, is more important than Shabbat. And further on that, this is an article, while it is addressed to the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox community, it is important that even non-Jews who are anti-vaccination understand that vaccination is pikuach nefesh, life-saving. And you've all heard about the epidemic of measles that broke out within the ultra-Orthodox communities due to bad information, misinformation. And moving on down. There is absolutely no one who disagrees with the ruling that a parent must remove his or his child to safety when danger is present. Indeed, this ruling serves in part as the basis for the ruling of Rabbi Yosef Shalom Elashiv, of blessed memory, that providing normal childhood vaccinations is a parental obligation. Rabbi Asher Weiss, Shlita, for the Shahar said the gospel maintains that it's a mitzvah to get vaccinated. Saving lives. And it goes on. No. There is no basis in Jewish law, halakha, for suggesting vaccinations to be avoided. And it goes on and it goes on and on and on. You are endangering the lives of your children by refusing to vaccinate them. You are endangering the lives of children and adults who cannot be vaccinated. Infants who's just... I'm going to read this final... This is the definition of Pikuach Nefesh. It is the principle of Jewish law that the preservation of human life overrides virtually any other religious consideration. When the life of a specific person is in danger, almost any command to not do an action of the Torah becomes inapplicable. Now, yeah, that... So, yeah, y'all got an obligation, a requirement to vaccinate your kids. Y'all have an obligation to stand up to separating families, putting children into concentration camps, disappearing the women, the adults, the children, the girls. Where are the girls? Why do we not see them? Where are the babies? Where are the adults? Why are we only seeing the boys stacked up like cordwood in the camps? In Christianity, Jesus says, the least among... that which you do for the least among us. So where are all these good, powerful Christians on the right? You all invoke your Jesus, but you're not there when Jesus is actually there. Pikuach nefesh, to save a life. Hypocrites, the lot of you. Pikuach nefesh, to save a life, overrides everything. So, on that joyous note, I want to say thank you for listening, and stay tuned for Katie Speaks with Katie Klobasish. Also, I'd like you to join me and my partner in Coherence, Ricky, at midnight Eastern, 1 a.m. Atlantic, and 9 p.m. Pacific for the late night morning talk show here on netrootsradio.com.
just breaking up.
Real stellar control of the White House. This is going to be disaster.
Good night.